Oh, man, and here comes Pat McAfee to perhaps make a change. And I'll tell you what, I'm on Pat's side. Overall, I am. Now, if I were to nitpick each and everything that he said, I may have a disagreement here and a disagreement there, but the overall message of what Pat McAfee is saying absolutely is something that every single Colts fan should get behind. And mind you, the stance that he has is not an anti-Colts stance. I know kind of one of the things that gets thrown around with Pat McAfee is Zaire Franklin said it on his podcast. Whose side are you on, man? You have it twisted. Pat McAfee is not anti-Colts. He's pro-Colts, okay? When you take into account where it is that his take is coming from, that is not anti-Colts. The anti-Colts thing to do if you're Pat McAfee, who is the largest voice in all of sports that would ever say anything about the Indianapolis Colts or show any passion about this team, the anti-Colts stance would be to be indifferent, okay? Pat McAfee, make no mistake, knows what it's supposed to look like, okay? Now, he may have just been a punter, and if you want to dismiss him, that's fine. I was nothing, right? I was never in the league. You were never in the league, okay? At bare minimum, even if Pat McAfee wouldn't be the guy that you picked to coach the players, at the end of the day, Pat McAfee was in the building during the greatest years that this Indianapolis Colts franchise has ever experienced, okay? He has a right to talk, and he has a right to point out what he's seeing and how he feels about it. When you have guys like him coming out, Marlon Jackson, the legendary interception of Tom Brady that ultimately sent the Colts to win on Super Bowl against the Chicago Bears, right? Nobody cared about that Bears game that year. That game against the Patriots was the Super Bowl. Marlon Jackson was the guy who won it. Robert Mathis coming out. T.Y. Hilton indirectly throwing up the popcorn, right? The popcorn GIF, whatever you want to call it, when Pat McAfee tweeted. My point is that when you see all of these guys come out, along with kind of this uprising in the fan base, even I, not that I have any impact on the Colts organization whatsoever, but I'm as positive as they get, and I'm looking and saying, what the heck is going on? You gotta wonder if change, and massive change, for the Indianapolis Colts in short order is something that is inevitable. Are we about to see shit hit the fan in Indianapolis? And the answer to that question is one that I wish was just very simple, right? In a perfect world, you look at the structure of this organization. In a perfect world, you'd have all of the timelines attached to one another. The problem that the Indianapolis Colts have is that you have, of course, Chris Ballard is on his own timeline, and he's been here for as long as he's been here, right? Which is seemingly, by the way, a time that is running out, all things considered. But the issue we have is that you have Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson, to some degree, because they were just brought here, on a different timeline, perhaps, than Chris Ballard. And Gus Bradley, forget that, right? The fact that he even has a job today as I speak is something that could be marveled at and studied in future years to come. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, other than just, whatever, we'll fire him after next week. Like, what the hell is he still doing on the Colts? But that's neither here nor there. The easy thing right now to say, in the wake of that Giants loss, is that this entire organization needs to be cleared out from top to bottom, from GM to head coach, all the way down to the players and the coaching staff. Everyone needs to go right now. And I'm not here today to tell you that that is wrong. In fact, it may very well end up being the right side of the conversation to be on. But there are two sides to this conversation. Make no mistake about it. Well, they're kind of on the same side, right? It's not like one is the complete opposite of the other, but one of them does have a little bit of nuance. We're going to talk about that side of things today, but before we do, you know what it is. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching on YouTube and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot it a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. If you're enjoying the show, let the people know that you're doing as such. Subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're trying to get to 3,000 by the end of this season. I think we have like 70 left. So maybe you're here for the first time, enjoying what you're hearing. Perhaps you're here for the 15th time and have yet to subscribe. Maybe today's the day to do so. But most importantly, let's enjoy the discussion. Let's be civil in the comments section for those of you guys on YouTube. This is a very sensitive time for Colts fans, okay? No need to insult each other. We have a common enemy right here, and it seems to be the mediocrity of this team, okay? Not that we're against the Colts. We're pro-Colts, as I said. But the point is that we should be united in this, right? There's no reason to be name calling in the comments. That's all. But let's get past that part because it's not super important. Don't want to distract us from the content, okay? I want to go back to the discussion that we started at the top of the show here, which is this. Keeping Chris Ballard for one more year. And I know some of you guys right there, that was it. What I just said, you're like, enough. I'm going to the comment section. Just wait. Just wait. Okay? Keeping Chris Ballard for one more year may be the cleaner and more diligent approach to cleaning this thing up in Indianapolis, even if it borders on an excess of patience, an irrational amount of patience. Just allow me to explain what I'm getting at here, okay? As I said before, what's the issue right now with the Indianapolis Colts in terms of the organizational structure? You have different pieces on different timelines, right? Your most important guys, when you talk about creating sustained success, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, you talk about creating a culture and you talk about the organization. You got to have a trinity from the GM to the head coach and the quarterback. All three of those guys need to be aligned, okay? The problem, again, as I said, is that Richardson and Steichen have been here significantly less time than Ballard. And in most cases, other than the one right now, because we're so emotional, we would say that perhaps just a little bit more time is required to make a final decision on Steichen, particularly, and Anthony Richardson, okay? If they fire Chris Ballard today or at the end of the season, right? You have Shane Steichen and AR as lame ducks in this organization. Like, if you're going to get rid of the defensive coordinator, if you're going to get rid of Chris Ballard, you're going to bring a new guy in, and you have a head coach and a quarterback that have nothing to do with the new GM coming in. Listen, that's really not a great place to be either, okay? Now, you may say, okay, good, they suck anyway, good riddance, right? And to that, I would respond this. Okay, good. If you're right, next season will be exactly the same as what we saw this season. And you might say that's likely, but I'm just telling you, okay, good. You will be right come next season. And if you get to that point and things are exactly the same, at least you can do that entire cleaning house of Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, and Anthony Richardson. Again, minus Gus Bradley. He should be gone yesterday, right? But those three guys, your holy trinity, they could all be gone in one foul swoop, and you could have the new GM and come in and start from scratch and essentially do exactly what it is that you want to do right now and just put it off one more year to make sure that you have done exactly your due diligence on the quarterback and Shane Steichen. I understand that that is a level of patience that perhaps we cannot have right now. But I'm just explaining that side of things to you because even if you disagree with that, you'd have to admit there's a level of validity to what it is that I'm saying right here. Now, I know what you might also be saying. Well, if we keep Chris Ballard, Justin, and we fire Gus Bradley, well, now Ballard's going to be in charge of hiring another defensive coordinator. We're going to have him for another offseason. He's going to do another draft. And to that, I'll say this. You can just fire the defense, right? Number one, who cares, right? You can just hire or fire the defensive coordinator after next season with everyone else. It's not like you're married to that guy because Chris Ballard hired him this year. If next year goes exactly the same and the defense looks exactly the same, you're just as justified. Now you fire Ballard, Steichen, defensive coordinator, and likely get rid of the quarterback as well, because if it didn't go well, the chances are you don't look at the quarterback and say that's all that promising. Very rare circumstance. Only a team like the Bengals could look at their quarterback after a mediocre season and say, well, we're 100% in on him, right? Okay. And then number two, and this one's definitely going to rub some people the wrong way, Chris Ballard doing one more draft and one more offseason wouldn't be the absolute worst thing to ever happen to this Colts team. Hear me out, okay? What makes the Colts mediocrity so aggravating? Like, why is it that we get so angry, right? And what I've started to learn is that the perception from like other fan bases is that we're an angry fan base. Why is it that we're so aggravated? It's because we feel like we have talent on the team. Now, we may not feel we have enough talent, but ultimately, there's a lot of people that would have looked at us coming into this season, going into last season, saying, hey, the Colts are kind of right on the precipice of something. I mean, you talk about guys like Jonathan Taylor, DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman Jr., Quentin Nelson, really the whole line, not to play the name game, Grover Stewart, right? Kenny Moore, Julian Blackmon, some might say, was one of the better young free safeties on the market this past offseason, okay? There's guys here. I don't have to name everyone, The point is that we have some good players on this team. That's what makes it annoying. So my point in bringing that up is that, well, if you look at the way Chris Ballard likes to run things and the way things have been, it's not like we've been perpetually 3-14. We've been perpetually mediocre and average at best. So if Chris Ballard were to be here for one more offseason, the likelihood is that the Colts wouldn't really get worse. They just wouldn't get better, okay? And they'll likely have cap space for the next GM that comes in. That's the point I'm bringing up. Now, the much more grim question when we talk about cleaning house is one that perhaps we don't want to talk about. I don't know if it's because it's in poor taste or it's just a sore subject or perhaps it's a little bit speculative, but hell, I'm going to say it. I'm starting to see it come up a little bit. And you know what? I'll join in on the conversation because it's something I've been thinking but not quite saying. If when this organization clears house and new hires are made, by whom is it that they will be hired by? Okay? Jim Irsay is the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. All right? There's no question about that. Where we have the questions, and again, this is not a diss at Jim Irsay, okay? But the reality is that he's been dealing with quite a few health issues, okay? To what degree is Jim Irsay still in charge of this organization? This is speculative. I have no inside sources, of course. Any of you guys who come here and think I have inside sources, you need to get your head checked, okay? Obviously, I don't have inside sources. Jim Irsay, to what degree is he still in charge? And if his daughters were the ones to take over, not for anything, I don't know anything about his daughters. Like, do his daughters have a real interest, right? I know the one kind of hangs around on the sideline or whatever the heck it is, but like, I've never heard these daughters speak up for the Indianapolis Colts. It's not like a situation with the Lakers where it's like Jeannie Buss and all them. They were kind of known a little bit before, you know, the big Buss, right, was kind of out of his reign. But you look at the Colts and you say, you know, do the daughters have real interest in running this team? Do they have real pride? Like, does the Indianapolis Colts, does that mean something to them? Do they care about the success of the Indianapolis Colts, or is their dad just the owner? Okay? That's the question. And it's one that, quite frankly, leaves the Colts kind of in a state of disarray in complete no man's land, which is why I said yesterday, for those of you that listened, it's almost felt like there's never been less hope as a Colts fan. We don't fully know who is in charge of this organization. Again, sure, it's Jim Irsay, but to what degree? And it's up to Jim Irsay, in my personal opinion, to let us know the answer to that question. Because right now, we look at this team and say, what is next? And we don't even feel optimistic about what is next because ultimately, no disrespect, you can't fire the owner. Okay? And right now, it looks like at minimum, perhaps Jim Irsay has lost his touch a little bit. Not saying that he's an idiot. Of course, we've seen Jim Irsay be the owner during some very successful times. But as of right now, I even have questions of the ownership. And when you get to that level, you know, there's not much you can do to turn a team around. That's all I'm going to say. But that's what I have to talk about today. I'll see you again tomorrow or the next day. Let me not put a timeline on it. We're going to be talking a lot this week, okay? So until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast. And as always, go Colts.